the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, we stand before you, Holy Spirit, as we gather in your name. With you alone to guide us, make yourself at home in our hearts. Teach us the way we must go and how we are to pursue it. We are weak and sinful. Do not let us promote disorder. Do not let ignorance lead us down the wrong path, nor partiality influence our actions. Let us find in you our unity, so that we may journey together to eternal life and not stray from the way of truth and what is right. All this we ask of you, who are at work in every place and time, in the communion of the Father and the Son, forever and ever. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Be seated.
Good morning and welcome to each and every one of you as we come to the inaugural getting together of the Father Reginald John Lecture Series. So we welcome especially our students from the Suira community, Simmons. Yeah, my apologies. My name is Deacon David Popo, and I'm a deacon of the Roman Catholic Church and director of the Cardinal Kelvin Felix Archdiocesan Pastoral Center, located in Marisil in the quarter of Grosley. The Cardinal Kelvin Felix Archdiocesan Pastoral Center, more commonly known as the Pastoral Center, has as its central mandate the spiritual and pastoral development of God's people. The connection between the spiritual and pastoral in the holistic development of a person is a recognition of the fact that spirituality is more than a relationship between us and God, the God and I relationship. It is a relationship which makes each and every one of us increasingly aware of God's love for us, as well as for those in various communities in which God's love moves about and for whom he shows his greatest care. This, in a sense, is why God took on the human form in Jesus Christ. And in a couple of months, we'll be celebrating what we call the mystery of the Incarnation, where God became man and walked the earth. It was to show and teach us that getting to know and love him is developed and strengthened within our everyday interactions as human beings living in St. Lucia, in the Caribbean, and the wider world. And to demonstrate our fellowship as human beings, be it at church, at work, at school, or at home. It is in this regard that the inaugural Father Reginald John Lecture Series is being held. The late Father Reginald John was a St. Lucian priest, and he provided an example of the incarnation of God through his Son within the inner city of Castries, working with especially the vulnerable and the poor young people who had no parents and who was at that time the society called them rough rats because they did not give them any proper value. And the late Father Reginald John worked as part of his pastoral ministry with a number of those young persons. Father Reginald John, in spite of his own flaws and struggles like all of us, his spirituality was manifested at that time in the 70s up to the 80s in his pioneering pastoral work. He opened the doors of the church and the presbytery to invite the marginalized while reminding those who were already there of their responsibility as baptized Catholics. To those outside of those spaces, at this point, I do not want to say too much more about Father Reginald John. The first two lectures will introduce or remind us as to who was Father Reginald John and his pastoral ministry. The lecture series organized by the Pastoral Center has a greater purpose than simply reminding us of a St. Lucian who did pioneering work with the poor and marginalized, disadvantaged young persons in St. Lucia. The greater purpose is to remind us that Jesus' call to assist the poor and disadvantaged is a call not just to some persons who have special gifts, but to each and every one of us. The Archdiocese of Castro is cognizant of this important call and mission to evangelize, to reach out, as we are told in the Gospels, has placed what the Church calls the preferential option for the poor as one of its two major pastoral points and plans for 2023, the other being that of evangelization. The term option for the poor is the term used first of all in the 60s in Latin America. It succinctly captures Jesus' call to us and restates what is reflected in canon law. The Christian faithful are obliged to promote social justice and mindful of the precept of the Lord to assist the poor. It indicates an obligation on the part of those who would call themselves Christians, first and foremost to care for the poor and vulnerable. Pope John Paul II, St. John Paul II, went further and expanded the use of the term to include spiritual as well as material poverty. His successor, Pope Benedict XVI, further extended the understanding of the poor to include all those who are marginalized in society. In Scripture, we hear of the widows, children, those with disabilities, victims of oppression because of their class situation, those who are hungry, those who have no food to eat, among others. It is the hope of the Pastoral Center that through your participation, regionally, nationally, and globally, in these lectures, that we can come to celebrate the life and the contribution of the late Father Reginald John, son of the soil, as well as others in our communities who made similar contributions and, as we speak, are doing so currently. That it will also serve as a platform to inform, as people of God, all of us, clergy and laity and religious, those outside of the church on the periphery, those inside the church, to discuss the status of poverty in St. Lucia and what our church is doing and what we can do as we attempt to evangelize and to be part of the mission of God to strengthen our communities to care for each other, to inform and broaden the knowledge of members of the Roman Catholic Church and indeed the wider society and other Christian persuasions on the imperatives of what is meant by a preferential option for the poor. We hope that through the lecture series we can foster a greater commitment to working to address the issues of the poor in our society and thereby responding to the imperatives of the gospel to love one another. In closing, let me thank you immensely for joining us for the first of the lectures in the inaugural Father Reginald John lecture series. We encourage you to ask questions and to share your thoughts on the lecture with friends and families, not just now, but for the years to come, and to invite them to partake in the other lectures that the Pastoral Center will convene and organize in collaboration with the church. Addressing the issues pertaining to poverty, my dear friends, requires all of us, each and every one of us, young, the elderly, the disabled. The Cardinal Kelvin Felix Archdiocesan Pastoral Center looks forward to working with you to addressing these issues. I thank you.
Thank you, Deacon Popo. So I was writing down some things there, but at my age, I have to write down, but it seems you young people don't need to write down because you... So the phrase you have to remember there was what? Preferential what? You forget already? The preferential option for the poor. That's an important term. And also, what is another important thing is that Father Reginald John, is just an example of one person who was able to demonstrate that preferential option for the poor. But he's not the only one. There are other persons in your community. There may be this lady or this woman or this man who collects clothing to give to the poor or does cook meals. These are the persons which we need to recognize and know about as they manifest in very concrete ways what a preferential option for the poor means. To share with us, we chose Father Reginald John because as Deacon Popo shared in his introduction, in the 70s, he did something which was radical and shocking to the church back then, because those young boys, which, as he said, they used to refer to as wharf rats, he encouraged them to come into the church, to come into the presbytery. And for many persons who were in the church, that was shocking, that was traumatic. And that is what we want persons to recognize, that sometimes we have to shock the world which we're in as we reach out and we care. Mother Teresa of Calcutta was another person who reached out in very concrete ways. But many times when we hear of those persons, they are persons abroad. But we are saying to you that there are persons within our communities, there are persons within St. Lucia who are concrete examples of that. And that is why we chose Father Reginald John. And to let us know a little more, because it was way before your time, I think many of you were born in this century. So to let you know about Father Reginald John, we will have Deacon Robert Harvey to share on that for us. Deacon Robert Harvey is a deacon in the church, ordained on October 4th, 2015. He's a retired secondary school teacher of history and Spanish. A Jamaican by birth, he married Sybil St. Rose of St. Lucia in 1970 and came to reside with her in St. Lucia in 1972. The marriage was blessed with 2 daughters, Judith and Christine. The St. Rose and John families are originally from Suzelle and are related to each other. Deacon Harvey lived on Meekwood Street for a few months, not too far from the parish center, between 1972 to 1973. During this period, he took the opportunity occasionally to talk with Father Reginald John and to learn about his ministry and outreach to the street boys. So without further ado, I invite Deacon Harvey to share with you on Father John.
Thank you, Mr. McCorville. And it is a pleasure and a privilege for me to be here today in order to make my own small contribution to this effort. Father Francis Oliver Reginald John, powerful names, eh? The man, the priest, and the Christian activist. Born June 16, 1931. Ordained priest in France on March 27, 1960. And called to his eternal rest on November 24, 2003. Father Reginald John is one of the more memorable, charismatic native diocesan priests who ministered in St. Lucia, and whom many of the older Catholic faithful will remember. The Castries Catholic Chronicle, that was our diocesan paper, which at the present is in limbo. In 1985, the newspaper featured Father John in 3 separate issues, April, June, and August of that year. And it is from this source that I have drawn most of my information, as well as from the family members of Father John. Father Reginald John was indeed a frank, outspoken, dynamic, and at times controversial native priest. He came from Choiseul and was part of a large family of 15 persons. His parents, Lenice Wallace John, his mother, was a school teacher, and his father, Ives John, the parliamentary representative for Choiseul constituency at that time. And the couple had 13 children, of which Reginald John was 4th in line. Reginald was the second member of the John family to join the priesthood. His elder brother, Julian John, died in France while studying to be an FMI priest. As a small boy, from the time he could remember, Reginald wanted to be a priest. The desire grew, and he was inspired and motivated by an old French priest and dedicated man, the legendary Father René Roger, FMI, who was parish priest of Choiseul for almost 60 years. Imagine that. 60 years a priest. At the age of 22, in January 1953, Reginald left for Trinidad and joined the seminary there. As destiny would have it, Archbishop Kelvin Felix, now Cardinal Felix, after whom this center is named, Kelvin was also a candidate studying at the seminary in Trinidad. And both he and Father John studied together for 4 years. In 1957, however, Father John left for France to join the FMI order and was ordained in France in 1960 and returned to work in St. Lucia in 1961. 2 other French priests who served in St. Lucia, and the older Catholic faithful here will remember them, Father Rabaud and Father Guy Gauvry. They were ordained in the same year on June 26, but Father John was ordained on March 27 of that year. On his arrival in St. Lucia in 1961, Father John was the only native priest active here at the time. He started a vocations group, and 2 of the boys from that group were well known at the time. One of them was Brother Laurentian, a Benedictine known as Daddy, who was based in Martinique. And believe it, the other member of the group was Patrick Anthony, later Father Anthony, and now Monsignor Patrick Anthony. Both of them fell under the influence of Father John in this group where they were aspiring to the religious life. Father John served at a number of parishes on the island, notably the cathedral in Castries, but also the Most Pure Heart of Mary, Bexon, and Our Lady of the Assumption in Soufrier, and Our Lady of the Assumption in Vieux-Fort. He was known and admired as a dynamic preacher, both in Creole and in English. Before coming to settle in St. Lucia, I had heard of him. I had learned of him from a Jamaican brother of the Dominican order who later worked and died in Grenada, whose name was Brother Martin Simmons. And Martin Simmons would tell me of how when Father John preached, people, they were excited and moved to tears at times. I would later come to hear Father John celebrate Mass at the cathedral and preach. And I was aware of his outreach to the street boys of Castries, often referred to in those days in a derogatory phrase as wharf rats. Father John also had a very popular radio program in Creole, aired both in St. Lucia, Dominica, and other Eastern Caribbean islands. His Way of the Cross in Creole, aired on Good Fridays, was also very popular. And Brother Ferdinand Stanislaus, a lay preacher of Jacmel who recently died, assisted him in developing these Creole programs. However, Father Reginald John will best be remembered for his outreach to the poor, neglected street boys of Castries in the 1970s. And it is for this labor of mercy and love, that we give him the titles Champion of the Poor and Christian Activist. Prior to being assigned as an assistant priest in Castries in the 1970s, Father John was stationed in Vieux Fort, Our Lady of the Assumption Parish. And while there, he reached out to the teenage boys of the town and the altar servers of that church. And we are now going to listen to testimonies given by two of them. They are now mature men, very active in the church, but the beginnings of their faith and their entry into the church was through this priest, Father Reginald John. Their names are Brother Anthony Blas and Brother Anthony Goodman.
Father John, Pierre John, poet extraordinaire, priest, lovable priest. You could love him, you could hate him, but you could not miss his awesome presence. His outspokenness and courage often made him at odds with the cultural establishment. A firebrand of a preacher and his nonconformist attitude often made him the subject of concern with the church hierarchy. He often captivated his audience with his superb and piercing homilies. A superb bilingual preacher. Oh, I know Paba must have learned a thing or two from this dynamic preacher. Father John has been credited with the introduction of pan music in church, much to the chagrin of church authorities, and often clashed with his peers, especially Father Limousin. On matters of parishioner involvement, Father John often infused pan music, specific church activities, with marches through Vieux Fort town, depicting the call to holiness and spirituality. One banner, which I recall vividly, was entitled Ban Sin, a banner during the Lenten season. And this street, Shine Drive, was named after Shine, who was the band leader who Father John constantly engaged with church activities. Our group of young altar servers were quickly rounded up into the Legion of Mary confraternity. Our many home visits took us to the outskirts of Vieux Fort, particularly Diamond, Grace, and Piero, where delicious fruits awaited our thirsty guts. Father John would also play with the various football and cricket groups as he attempted to outplay the players. He was a strict disciplinarian and did not take kindly to disturbances during Mass. One incident I recall, Father John, as an individual, physically etched punishment on one who was disturbing him during Mass. To this day, the name has stuck to him, an individual in Vieux Fort everybody is aware of. His transfer brought much disappointment, disapproval, and anxiety to the South. I vividly recall parishioners clinging and holding on to the vehicle that affected his departure. These events will eventually remain and etch in my memory forever. I, however, am fortunate to have a photo with him when his body was exposed for burial in the Vieux-Fort Catholic Church.
My name is Anthony Goodman, one of the parishioners of Vieux-Fort, who spent a couple of years in the company of Reverend Father Reginald John. And I have to admit, he was a soldier. He was a warrior. He was a man who don't let up on anything. He was very outspoken, and it was a pleasure being as a matter of fact, I started as an acolyte at the age of, I think, 11 or 12. And he trained us very, very well. He was one of the best parish priests I could account for. He was very much involved in community. He believed in community. He got us together. As a matter of fact, he was the first person who organized a male choir in Vieux-Fort. There was a male Legion of Mary group, which Father John organized for Vieux-Fort. We also had a special group that used to go out to visit all the institutions on Christmas, every institution in households. And he was very famous for organizing concerts also. He was very good at having concerts on Easter and Christmas and these occasions. But one thing, he was a no-nonsense character. Nobody could play the fool with Father John. Father John was very outspoken, he was down to earth, and he would not put water in his mouth to say what we have to say. There are a lot of people in the church who didn't like him because of his outspokenness. One person I can compare now with Father John is Father, what's his name, the one from Soufrière, Albert Smith. I think he's taken a page from Father. I think he was trained by Father John spiritually. Because he's very much, if you're looking for another Father John, is Albert Smith. I like his style because he reminds me, every time I hear that man on the television, he reminds me of Father John. Because he was not a very popular people among, especially the fraternities, because he told you those who sit at the front there who are pretending to be so holy, the people at the back sometimes are more worthy than them. And they were very upset when he used to tell them that in church. Some of them even tried to avoid him at church, at Mass sometimes. Whenever he was saying the Mass, they would even come. But Father John didn't give a damn. He said what he had to say. And he was not being liked by some of the parish priests, not some, but I think one particular. There was a particular parish priest who made life very difficult for him, and that was Father Limousin. Because I was in the presbytery very often. I used to go down and make acolytes and everything, because he would bring us there to prepare, not acolytes, how do you call it? The host, because it was being done at the presbytery itself. And we used to go there and cut out the host for things. And he used to bring us together. Father John was so concerned about the young people in Vieux-Fort that all the bad boys, all the wicked little fellas, what's happening in Vieux-Fort now would have never happened if Father John was a parishioner of Vieux-Fort. Because you bring all these people who's called waywards, the wayward boys, he would have us in some sort of activity or another, some social activity or something, beach party or concert or something. And that was very good of Father John. He gave us both physical, moral, and spiritual guidance. He guided us along the way. I can't recall seeing anybody involved in any strange activity in Father John's days in Vieux-Fort. Everything he did was to guide the young people in Vieux-Fort. So he was really a spiritual leader. And that is why he was not liked by some of the, because the presbytery was like everybody's home. But some of the priests, they didn't like the idea of Father John bringing Tom, Dick, and Harry into the presbytery, and that seemed to have upset a lot of them. You know what I mean? Because Limousin used to actually lock him out of the presbytery sometimes and say that, but he always gave the impression that Father John was drinking too much rum or something, which was not true. Father John liked his little alcohol in truth, but Father John was never drunk to say get drunk. Father John liked his little tafia. At that time they used to call it out in this way. What a hot topic, he had name calling it bath. He had like his little bath. But that was about it. But Father John never got drunk to say he would go to the presbytery drunk. But Limousin didn't like the idea of he bringing people around there, because there was a library at that time. There was a few books called Tintin. We used to go there and read at that time, But when Father John left Vieux-Fort to go to another parish, that was the end of Vieux-Fort. There was never a priest who came back to Vieux-Fort who was able to revive that spirit of socialism, that togetherness that Father John brought for us in Vieux-Fort. And for this, he's going to be eternally remembered. I don't want to say too much more. I think there's a lot more people in Vieux-Fort can say, but I think that is what I want to say for now, because I will let somebody else do the rest. There are a lot of people in Vieux-Fort who are going to say a lot more than I have said there today, because Father John left a mark for us in Vieux-Fort. His name has never been forgotten, and we will never forget him. I'm happy that this has been done on his behalf, and I pray to God that wherever his soul is, that God will give him a special place. As far as I'm concerned, he's not Father John to me. He's Saint Reginald John, because I think he's a saint. No matter what he may have done in his life, I think God has given him a place in heaven. and I think he deserved that. So I would like to honor his name as, I would like you all to honor him as Saint Reginald. Please for me. Thanks in advance. I think that's it for now. Yeah, Father John organized some very, very good concerts portraying the birth of Christ in Vieux-Fort. Two very good concerts I remember very well was once, not once, every Christmas he used to have the groups from Dermont, Vieux-Fort, Belgian, and they would ride the horses. This portrayed exactly the birth of Christ, from the time Joseph went to the shrine to the time that Christ was born. And he used to ride on a donkey all the way into Vieux-Fort with a crew, portraying the actual birth of Christ. When we go to the church, the celebration would end there. And the same thing happened for Easter also. They would portray the way of the cross in a very, very, dramatic manner, and ending with the same, with the death and resurrection of Christ. But Father John was very good at organizing concerts. He was very good at, Christian things that relate to the church. Any big activity, any feast, he was actually portraying it in a concert form. He was very good at organizing these kind of concerts to bring it out, so people would feel it a little more. It was very, very good. I saw people cry at those concerts. People used to shed tears when they saw the thing in reality. And that was very, very nice of Father John. These are things that we can never forget. Never in our lives can we forget that. Yeah, man, he was good at that. The man was perfect. He was good. That's why I call the man saint. He was gifted. The man was being spiritually inspired, man. He was inspired by God, I said. He came out with it nicely. That's what I remember so far. Excuse the 70-year-old man,
I'm sure you learned so much from those testimonies, and as Brother Anthony Goodman pointed out, he reached out to the needs of those youngsters in Vieux-Fort, and that was preparing him for his next mission in Castries. What you heard of took place in the late 1960s, and in Castries now, in the 1970s, he saw the destitution of those boys roaming the streets, many of them looking forward to St. Lucie Day, when they would climb the greasy pole and get things, or people would throw coins from the cruise ship, imagine that, and they would dive in the water to collect those coins. That was the poverty, and and they did it proudly, but he saw the need, and his heart of mercy reached out to them. He at first he housed them in the downstairs of the presbytery in Castries. A lot of Catholics brought him assistance in his work, and there were both those who were for him and those who were against him. Later, he would move to the Morne as he tried to introduce the boys to agriculture, gardening work. And he had them in Goodlands, in a house in Goodlands for some time. We tried to recruit 2 or 3 of these fellows who were once his boys, but we succeeded in getting only one. And we are grateful. We want to thank him. His name is Lester Constable. He's now an electrician, and he's doing excellent work, particularly at the cathedral. He consented to give his testimony, and we are going to present it to you now.
Basically, my situation was like, just finished Carmichael School, and I was just there, nothing doing. That was basically the situation I had, just there, nothing doing, as a young boy. Well, I was about between 12 and 13 years old. We used to live Waterworks Road at the time, when Father John used to be coming around, and then he came to my mom's house, and because my mother herself wanted some help with me, where someone had to get Father John to come to the house where we was living, Waterworks Road, and my mother asked him whether he could take me on because I have nothing doing. Well, we had a lot of good memories with him. Father John was like a father to me. When I joined him, I used to be going to the prayer retreat, And we used to be there spending a lot of time when there was no school. And after when school opened, he used to give us little lessons. And then after a little while, he moved on to another place. That's up the Mon. He went where he had a school. And then that's where we move on. We carry on going to school with him until we reached a point where we had to find work to do after a couple of years. To be honest, I really didn't know my father because he died when I was very young. And I really didn't know him to be with me as a father. That's why my mother ended up finding Father John to be serving as a father for me. And which he did a lot for me, showed me a lot of manners, take me off the streets and make me who I am today. Father John taught us a lot. I wasn't the only one. He did a lot for us. He gave us other different options to have a carnival band one time. He used to take us all over the place, teach us different things, how to go ahead in the normal day life because we was getting a little older. We wasn't young and we know we're getting into the work field. The way he used to talk to us a lot where we would have to find something to do. And as a result of that, he ended up getting a few of us at the Parish Center. There was a handicraft center there. We get a few of us there. And then we move on from there. To really describe Father John, it takes a lot. Father John he was too much. He was more than a priest. He was just like a father. He would be helpful. He would do everything. Father John is like, I cannot really even finish explaining the kind of man he was. He was really, really, really a man that, I don't know, God just put him on earth to see about young people at my time. He was a very, very nice man. I can see nothing bad. All I could say is good for Father John. And may God bless him wherever he is. He did that. Because after when school finished, we'll be in the presbytery and he'll be talking to us like a father. He would make sure that when we leave the presbytery, we leave there well fed. He would give us money to go buy armor, go and buy bread, corned beef, cheese. And then he would take care of us. He would not just send us home hungry. He would make sure that we are okay. So that when we come next morning, it's just a love with that priest. He was just a loving priest. You can't have nothing too much to say about him, but he was loving, Father John. Well, right now, praise the Lord, I got a lot of knowledge from Father John. He was one of those that inspired me to move on to get a family and whatever. Right now, I'm a qualified electrician. I do jobs. I also do a little taxi. I go ahead doing a daily work. I work with different companies in St. Lucia. I do work for the church. I go along helping a lot, that's what it is for me today, Yeah, Father John was he was encouraging us, to be more in the priesthood, to be acolytes, which none of us never carry on doing acolytes. We'll just go in church with him when he having service, be there alongside him. But for us to play a role where we have to be priests, we had never really wanted to be that part. As when we used to have Sunday Mass, he would bring us in the church, we would sing for the children, because even when the first steel band that played in the cathedral was Father John Boyce, he went to Scrub. Scrub gave us all the pants and trained us, and we used to play for children's Mass in the cathedral on Sundays. And even when it's New Year's Day, Father John would make sure we're all right after children's Mass. We go all on the square. He give us money to take care of ourselves, buy apple, fruits, everything. Father John was nice. These days have gone, and at least it's good to remember all these nice things he had done, you know. So that's what it is.
We have come to the end of this program, which I trust has been instructive, and that it will serve the purpose for which Deacon Popper outlined at the beginning, that it will be a stimulus to awaken the consciousness of our people, to reach out to those who are poor and neglected. We thank God for Father Reginald John and for his ministry, and we commend him. You notice some regard him as a saint. He was no saint. None of us is a saint. And we commend him to our divine Lord for reaching out to those who were needed, those who needed help and love. May his soul rest in peace. Amen.
Thank you, Deacon Harvey. There are just about 3 points I just want to emphasize, which came through what Deacon Harvey said and what the testimony said. He was down to earth. Down to earth is just a simple way, a different way of saying he was authentic. He was real. And that is something all of us have to learn and practice doing now, is how to be ourselves. Because there's pressure all of the time, all around us, to act certain ways, to behave certain ways. But it is important for us to know, this is not me. It may be okay for somebody else, but this is not me. I will not do that. So there are issues of, and I'm not young anymore, but I think for young people, issues of tattoo, issues of earrings, issues of dress, all these things will become issues for you. Do I dress because this is the new fashion? Do I do this because it's the new fashion? So it is important. The lesson from Father John is not for you to know the history of Father John, but the lessons which we learn from that. And one of the things in terms of saying he was down to earth is saying to us that we must always try and be our authentic self. Second point, whenever you try and be your authentic self, there will be people who will not like you. There will be people who will not just simply not like you, but will actively work against you. Will gossip about you. Well, again, I'm not too familiar with that. Will put the rumors on social media or whatever it is, because you do not want to be or do what they are doing. So who do you think you are? What is this? So he experienced that, and that is the lesson for us. When you are authentically yourself, when you are trying to do what you think is right, there will be people and close friends, sometimes very close friends, who will not like you and work actively against you. Third point, that his life was one of being involved. He did not just be a priest, he was involved. And the lesson is for us, we too have to be involved. We have to learn to be part of what's going on. So for students, I know in most of the secondary schools nowadays, there are many clubs, whether it's guides, whether it's cooking club, whether it's Red Cross, there are clubs in the school. And the purpose of that is to encourage young people to become involved and not just live their life in isolation. Because it is only through your involvement in what is happening you can grow and blossom. For adults within the church, there have been continually different groups, whether it's prayer group, whether it's St. Francis of the Paul, what's their name again? St. Vincent de Paul. There are always different types of groups. And if any of the groups that exist do not meet your need, you can create a new group so that they can be. But the message of Father John's life is not just about, hey, he started a pan group, that's good. He had the bingos, he had the concerts. All these are nice. But the message for us today, the lesson for us today, is the need for us to become involved in what is happening around us, to make a difference. We are the hands and the feet of Jesus in the world today, and that is what we are called to be. So these are the three little points I wanted to emphasize. We now would open the floor for if there are any comments or any questions on what and what Deacon Harvey shared, or if there's any question you would like to ask, please do that now, and then we will bring it to a close.
While we're waiting for questions, I just mentioned that after he left, I think about the last 10 years of his life, he migrated to the United States. And true to form, he was in New York, in Harlem, by the way. Harlem historically has been a center for black people from all over the world. And he made his contribution there. He was chaplain to one of the prisons in Harlem. And he had to learn Spanish, by the way. He became fluent in Spanish. And so using his Spanish, his Creole, because there would have been Haitian blacks in Harlem too, he ministered to them with love. And he was highly favored and commended for his work there.
Morning, everybody. Bonjour tout le monde. Thank you, Deacon Harvey, for enlightening us on Father John's life. Growing up as a young person, as a child, I used to hear of Father John. And there were all kinds of descriptions about this man, that he was fiery, he used to tell people as it is. And as Deacon Harvey told us, we need that kind of ministry in St. Lucia. And you heard the gentleman, Anthony Goodman, spoke about how fiery he was, how he was able to move into the communities and bring the young people together and organize activities and so on. And so we thank God for Father John, and we want us to have this kind of mind. And for me, I want to develop that kind of mind, to understand who Father John was and the kind of contribution he made in our society today. And that is why we're able to come today and reflect on his life and asking God to give us the direction that we need so that our church can become much more vibrant, with local priests as him to give a lot of support as we need. So thank you so much, Deacon, for sharing with us on Father John's life.
I see all those beautiful smiling faces. Tell me, is there any, whether in your church, you may not be of our Catholic Church, but that doesn't matter. We are all brothers and sisters in Christ. In your churches, do you see any example of reaching out to people who are less fortunate or on the margins? Mention, come and say something for us. We want the young people to rap with us. Yes? The young man to the back, perhaps, say something. No? Because that is it. We have to, Jesus came for the poor. He came for the poor. And he wants us to know that he has his first love is for them. He himself was poor. He was the God, the mighty, all-powerful God, but born in a manger among the cattle. And any example, maybe at your school you have done anything or you're reaching out? No? Yes?
I think, Deacon, you mentioned about wharf rats. What are wharf rats? Do you know who are wharf rats? Have you all ever heard this word before? Can somebody tell me what is a wharf rat? Have you ever heard this word?
Yes.
Well, ghetto children. So give us some examples of, you have any wharf rats in your school? Any children?
It is.
Okay. Okay. When we say wharf rats, you know what rats are? And you know what a wharf is?
Wharf is, yes. Look at how they were comparing the youngsters, the poor youngsters at that time. They look at them like rats that you find in the roof of the roof of the wharf. The wharf has so much things brought in from abroad, food stuff and so on. It's really very derogatory.
Yeah, but are you reaching out to the wharf rats?
No,
No.
there
Are there
other-
reasons? Are there ways that you can reach out to the wharf rats? Are you all afraid of the wharf rats? Do you all go too close? So, what are some of the suggestions that you can make to reach out to the wharf rats now? The kind of wharf rats that we have now, you describe them as the ghetto boys or ghetto girls and so on. What are the signs of these people you see around you? Signs of, who's that? The gangs. The fights. The fights. Are you all reaching out to them? Do you think the society is reaching out to them as Father John did and brought them together, organized activities for them? What would you all like to see happen to the wharf rats during this time? What would you all like to see happen or the church do for these wharf rats? What do you all think can be done? Come and share with us. Come.
Well, in my opinion, I believe that for the wharf rats, maybe they should have more discipline in their lives, meaning to the parents, starting from their parents, starting from their homes. So yeah, and from the schools, we have the different I could say activities, clubs that they join to change their lifestyle around, make them a much better person, make them see the real world. Yeah.
So for me, like majority of the secondary schools have a purpose club. So it's like you help children for majority of their problems and stuff. You can speak to them. The purpose help them with their issues and stuff. And sometime last week, my purpose group went to, well, not all of us, but they picked some of the children to go to the St. Mary's College School, and they had a peace day. So everything we had to march and stuff because it was peace. We made peace posters. I feel like other schools should do that to enlighten them more about peace and teach them more about like what life is, because for them it's drama and all these things. So I feel like they should talk to them more about it instead of all these irrelevant stuff they getting themselves involved in. And
Well, the wharf rats is more their family. It's more like they need somebody to talk to. So like they should like make them see that they can trust in the person to talk to them and like to tell them they feeling, what they thinking, different things like that. Also what they said, all of that, yeah. Visit their homes, tell them about, give them leaflets about church and how you calling it? Welcoming them to church, telling them about God. Yeah, different things.
Thank you very much. So I hope you yourselves will try to do what Father John attempted to do. with your own pairs, the pair helpers group, and so many others, and probably your neighbors and your friends. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. The important thing is for us, I think from the little sharing is for us not to believe that we cannot do anything. That's the key thing, because sometimes it's frightening me, I don't get involved. So we just step back. And as I said, the lesson which Father John's life says to us, we must get involved. And so we have to choose because of our skill sets. We have to choose in what ways we can get involved, but we must get involved. Because if we do not get involved, the problem is not solved. So do not think you cannot do something. Do not think because I'm a student, because I'm a retiree, because I cannot do something, there is something you can do. Whether it's praying, whether it's, as I said, with your peer groups, helping out with your peer groups, whatever, or your different groups being involved in basketball, volleyball, after clubs activities, all those various things can help in some way in helping to alleviate and address those problems. So once again, I would like to thank Deacon Harvey, and I invite us, let's give Deacon Harvey a round of applause for presenting to us Father Reginald John, the man, the priest, the Christian activist. We have come to the end of the first lecture in the inaugural Father Reginald John lecture series. I will now invite Mrs. Alifa Cauldron-Norley to give the vote of thanks. Ms. Norley.
Good day, everyone. I am Alifa Cauldron-Norley, Head of Operations and Business Services at the Cardinal Kelvin Felix Archdiocesan Pastoral Center. On behalf of the Center's Director, Reverend Deacon David Popo, management and staff, I would like to thank each and every one of you for gracing us with your presence. The first in the series of lectures for the Father Reginald John Lecture Series. We hope you have felt welcome and comfortable. Putting together an undertaking such as this requires the assistance and participation of many individuals and organizations, and so I would like to acknowledge and thank them. Our sponsors, Mr. Leslie Clark of Domino Pizza, Cox & Company, Janu Credit Union. Today's presenter, Deacon Robert Harvey, Catholic Television Broadcasting Services, Mr. McCoville Combi, our Programs Officer, staff of the Cardinal Kelvin Felix Archdiocesan Pastoral Center, and you, our in-house audience. Thank you all for your support, and we look forward to you continuing the journey with us through the remaining lectures. I thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Cauldron-Norley. Okay, we have one last task for the in-house audience. We would like you to spread the word and let others know that they can view this lecture on the Archdiocese of Castri's YouTube channel and Facebook page tomorrow, Wednesday, 4th October at 8 p.m. So tell your friends you're going to be on YouTube so they could check you out. Okay? So it will be on tomorrow, Wednesday, 4th, at 8 p.m. on the Archdiocese of Castri's YouTube channel and Facebook page. And it's coincidental but very fitting that the first lecture will be on tomorrow, because tomorrow is the feast of St. Francis of Assisi, who was one of those persons who made a special outreach to the poor. We also extend an invitation to other persons who would like to be part of our in-house audience for the next lecture, the second lecture in the series. It will be next week, the same thing, next week, Tuesday at 10:30 right here at the Cardinal Kelvin Felix Pastoral Center. So we invite those persons, other persons, if you would like to be part of the in-house audience, to join us then. The topic will be Father John the pastoral approach of Father John, and the lecture will be presented by Monsignor Patrick Anthony, as Deacon Harvey shared in his thing. Monsignor Anthony was one of those persons who Father John inspired when he was growing up to become a priest. So the topic next week, the pastoral approach of Father Reginald John, it will be presented by Monsignor Patrick Anthony. Some of you may have known him. He does Lucian Talk on social media, and he's a lot into the culture. He's one of the founding members of the Folk Research Center. So we look forward to you being with us Tuesday next week, the 10th of October, at the Pastoral Center for that lecture. We at the Cardinal Kelvin Felix Archdiocesan Pastoral Center do a number of things. So if you need to contact us, you can contact us at 452-0792. 452-0792. Once again, thank you and God bless. Traveling mercies. Thank you.